As ANC starts work on its 2019 election manifesto, major problems remain unresolved. The ANC has set the wheels in motion in preparation for the general election 2019, trying to reposition itself as a broad church as it actively seeks outside views and robust engagement. Well, the ANC held a manifesto consultative workshop in Irene, where it brought together more than 600 national as well as provincial leaders, deployees in the government from across the country, well-known activists and even academics. The objective was to put together a set of ideas that would bear their vision of what's best for the country in the next 5 years to come. Well, joining us in studio this evening is ANC spokesperson Mr. Pulemabe. Very good evening to you, sir. We thank you very much for your time.
Evening, and evening to your viewers.
Essentially, having a look at the objective of the manifesto and putting together ideas on what is best to take South Africa forward from the ANC's point of view, what is the vision for the next 5 years from the ANC?
Well, the vision of the ANC is surely going to be determined largely by what comes out through this consultative process. Actually, the manifesto workshop, which happened yesterday, was a broad consultative platform, bringing together the broadest section of society. We were even oversubscribed. From the initial number of 600, you had more people coming, representing diverse views. Actually, what this process did is that it also placed to the fore what is contained in the Freedom Charter, which is where we say people shall govern, because the ANC believes that the only way you can make sure that people become part of that governing is when they could input on what should become your own policy makeup.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking of governance and some of the issues, let's talk about the factions that the current ANC is leading. We'll just talk about this weekend alone. You know, in Limpopo, the conference was taking place. Simultaneously, we saw other members of the ANC in court fighting for the interdict to stop the conference that was taking place.
Well, we had already issued a statement to that effect, where we had welcomed the ruling on the case. You would know that it was struck off the roll because there were no points of agency. But you'll also know that coming out of 2012 with the Ramakatsa case, there has been an attempt by many to abuse Section 19 of the Constitution, which Section 19 effectively gives rise to people joining and participating in organizations. But it also says these people must be able to subject themselves to the rules of those organizations. Now, the constitution of the ANC is not inconsistent with Section 19 of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. But as a matter of course, coming out of the 54th National Conference, we introduced the National Dispute Resolution Committee to begin resolving those. That's why the two court victories are important to us, because they begin saying to members that they must now subject themselves to internal processes. There was a case where the ANC emerged again in the Eastern Cape, which had to do with the Ndebele report brought by 4 members from Port Elizabeth. That case has also been struck off the roll, with costs, of course. But also one of the things that we hope could be happening going forward is, in Parliament, we have got the political party funding bill. It could be an area of interest to make sure that in the political party funding bill, one of the things that you begin putting under the section on disclosures is for people to disclose the source of funding where they take political parties to court. Because quite often those that take us to court are people that you could ordinarily see that it might have been difficult to secure the services of a senior counsel on an urgent basis. But more interesting sometimes is the kind of individuals who stand in this court. Some of them, their political views and their own affiliations is well known. Well, now the stand that the ANC has taken is that it is not going to allow itself to be liquidated through a court process. And to make sure that it avoids that, we pay greater attention on the things that needs to be done. We are thorough. In Limpopo alone, we have dealt with over 200 disputes that were brought forward to the Provincial Dispute Resolution Committee, working together with our own national deployees led by Comrade Togo Didiza. The same process had been undertaken in KwaZulu-Natal. Our Deputy Secretary General, Comrade Jesse Duarte, has been there for the past 2 weeks. Even after that, there was an interdict for the provincial conference, we still went there through the DSG to extend an olive branch to those that had gone to court, understand what were their areas of concern, and begin saying there are sufficient mechanisms in the ANC to find solutions to those. But on the Eastern Cape case, for instance, the court had said, I mean, in the 16-page ruling, one of the things that have been raised there is why would they have gone to court when the NEC of the 23rd and the 25th, I speak under correction, of March, would have spoken extensively, discussed extensively the report, where a decision was taken that this area belonged to the arena of a political solution. As a matter of course, officials are going there to meet with the PEC so that they can work on that kind of a solution.
Speaking of leadership, how particular is the manifesto going to be in detailing the best way forward when we have leaders within the ANC who seem to be disagreeing amongst themselves, not necessarily only members, who can't even agree on issues such as land reform and the measures in going forward and how to, institute land reform going forward?
Well, I don't think that there is disagreement on the kind of an approach that the ANC need to be taking on land reform. Again, I will keep on referring to the Charter because today marks 63 years since the Freedom Charter was adopted, and one of the clauses that are contained in the Charter is that the land shall be shared amongst those who work it. So, and what it begins to say is that there must be a program as part of agrarian reform to even give out implements. And what have we done as a democratic government? One of the things we've done was to introduce the department that deals with rural development to make sure that you begin dealing with those situations. But what the ANC has done beyond the work in government is to also, this year, we convened the historic land summit so that we could begin consolidating different views coming from the broadest section of society on what needs to happen on the question of land reform, so that by the time the ANC participate in the constitutional review process, we are able to deposit in there views that have been tested and have been widely contested and have been widely tested with the broader section of society.
Okay, let's move on to elections. Elections are around the corner, and it seems as though there seems to be this general consensus or feeling that convincing the electorate is not going to be an easy thing. I can cite the sentiments from Ramaphosa, who initially opened up the workshop this weekend, calling for all members to be honest and to be robust in the issues that they bring forward.
Well, one of the things that you'll have observed is that just after the 54th National Conference, when we began taking out the notion of unity and renewal, one of the things that we had to begin working on as well was to address the trust deficit between the movement itself and the general public. And this has been occasioned on how, one, we dealt with the question of state capture, two, how we are beginning to respond to the issues of corruption, three, making sure that there is greater installation of ethical leadership, one that understands the appreciation of corporate governance, does things in the, because one of the things that would happen is that if you do not address the scourge of corruption, it also affects the pace through which the delivery or distribution of basic services is supposed to be occasioned out there. Now, the ANC has got a clear program on this. Even on the investment drive that the president of the ANC, who's also the president of the country, has been leading, one of the things that he has been doing was to begin saying to investors, we are serious about dealing with the scourge of corruption. We are serious about fast-tracking the creation of gainful employment, creating jobs that are sustainable, not just short-term employment. I mean, I can tell you now that one of the things that we did through a process that was led by the Secretary General of the ANC, Comrade Ace Magashule, was to go to China, meet with the Communist Party of China, understand how they've been able to change their own policy paradigm so that it could be to the benefit of the broadest section of their own society there.
Just before we wrap it up, let's talk about the intra-dynamics that seem to have somewhat broken and made so many holes in the ANC and created all this division. How is the ANC simultaneously going to be reeling that back in, strengthening from the inside, whilst still being able to be strong enough going into elections 2019?
Well, one of the things that you would see is that the leadership of the ANC across provinces, I mean, a typical example is Limpopo. They have just emerged from their own provincial conference. And I mean, we have commended the delegation in that conference on how they had carried themselves. They started a conference even when there would have been 3 of their members who were in court trying to halt that against the will and wishes of over 1,500 strong delegation. Those who contested for the position of top 5 and couldn't make it are all part of that provincial executive committee, which is beginning to carry forward the message that the president had delivered to that conference, that it is important that in the makeup of your leadership there is inclusivity, because the ANC belongs to all of us, regardless of the different views that we might hold on our own preferences on who should ultimately emerge as a leader. But you see, in the ANC, you do not have policies that will govern only those who agree with Pule or only those who agree with Mbalula. You will always have policies that govern all of us in the ANC. And these are policies that we all sell to the general public as a shared vision, and one that will be able to construct the country we're all looking forward to.
Definitely. We thank you very much for your time this evening. That was ANC spokesperson Mr. Pule Mabe joining us in studio, talking the ANC as it prepares for 2019, as well as the manifesto and workshop that took place this past coming weekend.